if you look at things back in the 1940s, 50s, even early 60s, there were men that would get married, have children, and they would leave. They would go start dating the secretary, or they'd leave the family in the lurch. And the mother would be left with kids. She'd be desolate. There wasn't a lot of help for her. So in a good way, they decided to write laws that would allow part of that man's income and his finances to support the woman and the kids, so he couldn't just leave them in a lurch. That was a good thing. But like in many ways, there are people that will game the system. And as you move forward through time and no-fault divorce and other things coming about, women quickly learned that they can actually be at fault in the marriage, either cheating or some sort of infidelity, just deciding to leave, and the man was still on the hook for money. And a story that I talked about 2 or 3 years ago is that attorneys, there's a fund, and I'm going to get some of this maybe not quite accurate because it's been many years, but there's a fund in the government that is meant to support women getting divorced, and it ties in with the attorneys. I forget exactly how, but the attorneys, there's with this law and funding, that if an attorney advises a woman to state that he had been harmful, either emotionally, physically, or some other way, she can get full custody of the children. And if she gets full custody of the children, not only does she get more money from the man, but the government backs up the attorney by giving him extra money, him or her, extra money, because of this case that they represented somebody that had been hurt by a man. And so now you have women claiming a good guy did something bad just so they can get full custody and therefore get more money from the state and get more money from the man himself. And it's really harming guys when it comes to divorce. And so you've got that portion of it, that we tried to do the right thing to protect women, and it ended up backfiring against men. And now it's to the point where there's been videos that I've done where a man, not only did he lose a good chunk of his income in a divorce, but at 2 or 3 years old, he's finding out the children aren't even his, but the state still says, well, the children recognize you as the father, so you must pay child support for children that aren't biologically yours, that she cheated. And so young men, when they see these stories come out and this travels across the web, and you say, well, if I get married, if I find out the kid isn't mine, I might still have to pay child support. In France and in other sections here in the United States, but France is a country I specifically remember, they made it illegal to do a paternity test on your children unless there's a crime involved, some sort of a crime. So a man can't just say, I want to make sure these kids are mine. You can't do that. It is actually against the law. So men start looking at this and they say, the system that we set up to protect women has been gamed against us. And that was the beginning. That was the things that I started getting worried about and noticing of, hey, don't cohabitate, because some people have to pay alimony because they've lived with a woman for 3 or 4 or 5 years, like in California or other things, and you're recognized as the provider. So you don't get married, you don't cohabitate. You got to be real careful if you have kids. And that's the base of the big worry, where a lot of myself and other content creators got into the red pill. And then what we started noticing, and I use red pill because it's a colloquial term that many people know, whether you want to call it manosphere or whatever, but just started talking about men's issues, we'll just say. And then moving forward, journalists today are overwhelmingly either women or have a left-wing bias. They're very in support of women. So the articles come out, men are not as successful in graduating at the same rates, women most affected. Like women can't find enough men to marry that are successful. Instead of focusing on the men that are struggling, they're talking about how the women are struggling because there's not enough good men to go around for women. And you start realizing there's a very strong anti-male thread that goes through everything, even in the conservative circles. And so as this comes to light and you realize the media is kind of against you, TV's against you, when's the last time you saw a masculine, intelligent male role model in a family? You don't see those. It's the women that's the smart, creative one, and the guy's the bumbling idiot that she always has to fix. Same thing in commercials. Same thing on social media, that if I came out and said a woman must be all these things, she must be traditional, low body count, She must cook, take care of the children, raise the children at home while I make the money. Well, I'm called backward thinking, old man, fuddy duddy misogynist. But if a woman comes out and says, I want the man to stay home and he must do 50-50 and I make the decisions and he needs, my money's my money and his money's my money and I'm never having kids and we need to do things my way, well, that's just her choice. So it's men's choice, bad. Women's choice, well, good. And when you start seeing this through many things, depending on how crazy you want to go, you can see it in everything or you can see it in just a little bit. And now on TikTok, to kind of bring this all the way up to current times, on TikTok, I can show you thousands of videos where women are saying men are evil, men are awful, men are worthless, men are blah, 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 blah. But if I said the same about women, my account's gone. It's over. And what it's causing is the crazy women's opinions being very loud and vocal for the world to see, and men's opinions silenced. So ironically, it's making men seem like they're not as crazy. And I'm sure there are plenty of men that are just as crazy and have just as crazy opinions, but they're not allowed to be on social media because they're shut down. I'll say it this way. Because women are allowed to say what they want to say and they're not removed from social media, women can go crazy and say some really crazy things and go viral for it. But the men that might be as crazy, that might say as many crazy things, they're not allowed to say it. They're removed from social media. And in the end, there's a lot of crazy women saying crazy things and not many crazy guys saying anything because they're not allowed to, because they're removed from the social media. So ultimately, it ends up making women look like the ones that have lost their minds.